Connecting to animals that have passed is very similar to connecting to animals that are still living. In both cases, you're connecting to them soul to soul. Of course, when you're connecting to an animal that's passed, the difference is that they no longer have a body. There are also differences in the kinds of information they might bring up in a session. They might reference how they passed and any messages they have around that. They might bring up how they connect to their human from the other side, if they are sending them signs. They might reference things that have happened in their human's life since their passing as a way of showing that they're still around. They might also talk about what they're up to on the other side or who they're with there. Now, the other side is not above us and it's not below us. It's very much all around us. And since we are spiritual beings having a human experience, we are spirits in bodies. We're not our bodies. We just have bodies in order to experience life. We are very much a part of the spirit world, while also at the same time part of the physical world. And we have both feet equally in both worlds at the same time. Despite the other side not being above us per se, it is often helpful to place our awareness above us when we're intending to connect to someone on the other side. So whatever your awareness is on, that's where you're connecting. And when you're connecting to a living animal, that is very much an outward connection from your heart, outward horizontally to connect to the animal there. When you're connecting to the other side, however, we place our awareness above us to help set the intention of connecting to the other side. And it just helps kind of focus that intention. I personally like to place my awareness on what is called the soul star chakra, which is just a couple feet above the head, above the crown chakra, which is at the top of your head. And I'll invite the animal to connect with me there. Now, there is also a little bit of a difference in terms of energy when we're connecting to a living versus past. In terms of when we're connecting to a living animal, it's us initiating the connection, us sending our energy out to connect with them. And when it's a past animal that we're connecting to, it often feels like they come to us. And so it feels a little bit different in that way as well. And we'll talk more about kind of the differences and discerning the differences as well later on. Connecting to an animal that has passed is also very similar to connecting to a human that's passed. Both animals and humans are all in the same space on the other side. There is no separate animal heaven from human heaven. It's all the same heaven. And they're free to mingle freely on the other side. And this is why sometimes when you're doing a session with an animal that's passed, you might also have humans jump in on the session, and vice versa. It's important to note that we have no control over those on the other side, but they will usually show up out of love because they want to connect to their humans again. We are not summoning them or forcing them to show up. They show up out of love and by choice. I can no more summon someone from the other side than I can summon someone in the physical world. I can only ask, and they choose whether or not to show up. In most cases, of course, they do show up because they love their human and they want to. Just as when you are connecting and communicating with other humans, it helps to be respectful and loving and open-minded when you ask an animal spirit to connect to you. The other side is full of love, understanding, and joy, and oftentimes it helps if we can work on embodying those aspects of ourselves in the reading to help our connection. To connect that to the mechanics of mediumship, we often say that spirit vibrates at a high frequency, higher than us living humans. We tend to vibrate at a lower frequency, and so if we raise our vibration, they lower theirs, and we meet in the middle. And so doing something where we're lifting our spirit's so to speak, whereas doing something where we're kind of getting into more of a joyous, peaceful, happy state before a session often helps us connect to spirit. So what kinds of information typically come through in a session with an animal that's passed? A few types of evidence can come through. First, you'll probably be given or get a sense of their personality as they're coming through. Maybe their physical appearance if you're not connecting through a photograph. Maybe their mannerisms, their family relations, any other animals they lived with, any family members, human family members, who did they bond most with, how did they feel about the other animals at home, and so on. Their habits, good and bad habits, behavioral challenges they had in life, interests, likes, dislikes, any favorite toys, activities, or food. Any favorite memories they have with their humans, their home environment, their greater role in their life and in the sitter's life, how they passed. Was it quick, slow? Was it a disease, euthanasia, passed on their own time, accident, murder, meaning true murder, not euthanasia? Were they lost? If it was a disease, what disease, or what part of the body was affected? If euthanasia, what were the surrounding circumstances contributing to that decision? If they were ill, all the ways in which their human helped them through their illness, treatments or reasons why treatments weren't done. The way they've been commemorated by their humans, they might want to bring up. Who they are with on the other side, what they are up to on the other side, what their plans are regarding reincarnation, if they've decided to reincarnate, or if they will wait on the other side for their human to cross, signs they send to their humans to show that they're still around them, things they have witnessed happening in their human's life since they passed, and what messages they have for their humans, whether that be about love or forgiveness or understanding or guidance and so on. And now this list is really just to give you an idea of what kinds of things an animal might bring up in a session. Though this is all what we would consider to be good evidence from spirit, it is important to remember that the animal will have their own agenda. And they might start off with a message for their human before they go into other information, just because the message is maybe most important to them. Or they might give you information that doesn't go under any of these categories, but it's still important for them to express that. Always follow what the spirit wants to bring through in the conversation and allow them to tell you their story. If you are searching for only specific types of information from them, you are attempting to control the conversation, which can also end up halting the flow of information coming through, as well as it moves you more into the thinking brain state rather than an open receptive brain state, which is what we want to be in during a session. Personally, when I am doing animal mediumship, I am a fan of allowing the animal to lead the conversation as much as possible for a couple of reasons. First, it respects them, of course, as an equal participant in the conversation, as they have things that are important for them to bring up. Second, it also gives you a chance to bring through verifiable evidence that you are connecting to the animal. Now, verifiable evidence is essentially information that the animal tells you about themselves or about their life, that the owner can then say, yes, that is absolutely right. So verifiable evidence is important in a reading, first to give you a clear sense that you are in fact connecting to the animal, and it's not just your brain spouting nonsense. Second, it's also to give the owner that clear sense that you are connecting to their animal. They are much more likely to take to heart the messages coming through from the animal if they also have seen, in fact, that you are connecting to them because you've brought through that evidence. Now, if we didn't bring through any evidence, then the human might discount the whole reading and it would have all been for nothing. We need some kind of system to make sure that we're connecting properly because, as we know, animal mediumship is not a science necessarily. It's much more of an intuitive art. So verifiable evidence is generally easier to bring through in the beginning of a session before the human has told you anything about the animal. I like to start off my sessions without knowing anything about the animal beforehand, and as I connect to spirit, I ask them to tell me about themselves in order to then bring through that evidence about who they are, and then bring up whatever topics they want to bring up. Now, the reading is going to be much more impactful if you can connect without knowing many details about the animal beforehand, and instead just let the animal bring those things up themselves. Another reason it's important to bring through evidence is that it helps us to be 100% certain of which animal we are connecting to. The client may have had several animals that have passed, all wanting a chance to come through, and not usually in the order we would like them to. They all have their own free will and their own needs and desires to communicate, and we must trust spirit to organize the session in a way that is most beneficial to everyone involved, and that doesn't always look like what we might want it to. And so sometimes those who are not the main priority for the reading will still come through first in order to help the others to come through sometimes that the owner really wants to hear from. And that might be because they are better communicators, or they just have a knack for this sort of thing, and so they can help bring through the others in the session. Sometimes it's also because they have a greater need to come through first. So because we can't control those on the other side, the system of making sure we're bringing through verifiable evidence and details about the animal helps us then identify who it is actually coming through. Now, when connecting to living animals, it is often helpful to allow time for their human to ask their own questions as well. So I generally follow kind of a 50-50 model where I'm letting the animal take the lead for about half the session, and then I'll let the human ask questions for the rest of the session. And so it's a little bit of this back and forth where we're troubleshooting behavioral issues, that sort of thing. Now, when you're connecting to an animal that's passed, that is different because there isn't the same need for troubleshooting behavioral issues or any of that comes with a living animal. So the session is going to be much more impactful if you leave less time for questions and allow the animal that's passed to take the lead for most of the session. I might leave like 5 minutes at the end of the session to see if the human does have any questions that the animal just didn't address in the first part of the session. But in general, I'm allowing the animal to kind of bring up anything and everything that's important for them. The animal on the other side knows what questions their humans have. They are aware of the specific kinds of guilt that their human is holding on to. They're aware of the things that the human wants to hear about most of the time. And so they will, if we give them the time to do it, the animal on the other side will bring up those things that are important for their human to hear about. They might not always address every single question that their human has, but most of the time they will in some form if we give them the time to do that in the session. So if we can allow the animal's soul to bring those things up themselves, it also helps them show that they are still connected to their human. They can feel their thoughts and know what's in their heart despite not having a physical body anymore.